In New York City, police have arrested another person in connection with druggings and robberies that led to at least 2 murders. And in Northern California, the executive director of the San Jose Police Officers Association is accused of distributing drugs all over the country. So we're going to actually start with the West Coast story. My goodness, 64-year-old Joanne Segovia appeared in a federal courtroom on Friday after investigators charged her with attempting to bring illegal synthetic opioids into the country from overseas. The drug was a form of fentanyl, one of the leading causes of overdoses in the United States. Prosecutors say Segovia was involved in a national distribution scheme using both personal and office computers to order the illegal substances. In initial police interviews, Segovia denied her involvement and instead blamed it on her housekeeper. The San Jose Police Officers Association said Thursday that they are conducting their own internal investigation into Segovia's activity at the organization. She has been released without bail under strict conditions from the judge. Her next hearing is set for April 28th. Let me bring back in Brian Buckmeyer to talk about this. So, Brian, Segovia's organization is against everything that she is being charged with. What do you take away from the case?
I take away that they're not watching their own. Segovia was bold enough and was able to not just use her personal computer, but her work one as well to order drugs internationally. The San Jose police may not have known what Segovia was doing, but to be able to use police resources to further the fentanyl epidemic in this country is disturbing, to say the least. We're all told to look at the southern border and this is how it's coming in, but no, it seems to be coming from this police force. Now, I'm curious as to why no bail was set. This seems like a serious crime to me, and one that a judge would set some amount of bail. I'm worried that this could be a foreshadowing of Segovia getting a different type of justice that others would have received.
Okay, well, as I said, that's the West Coast. Now let's go to the East Coast, where 2 men have been arrested in connection with drugging deaths in New York City. 25-year-old Julio Ramirez was found dead in a taxi last April after leaving an LGBTQ bar called the Ritz in Hell's Kitchen. The medical examiner described his death as a, quote, drug-facilitated theft. Investigators found out money was taken from the victim's financial accounts using the facial recognition technology on his phone. 30-year-old Jacob Barroso was arrested and charged with Ramirez's murder on Saturday, and he's also charged with robbery, grand larceny, and identity theft. 33-year-old John Umberger also met a similar fate just weeks after Ramirez's death. He left the LGBTQ club Q in the same neighborhood and was found dead 5 days later from the same drug cocktail. His financial accounts were also stolen from and accessed through his cell phone. A second suspect, Robert DeMaio, surrendered on Monday. Jaquan Hamilton was also indicted last week, but he hasn't been caught yet. So let me bring in Terry Austin to talk about this kind of insane and chilling case. So Terry, multiple people, they've been charged. Do you think one of them could end up becoming a cooperating witness in all this?
You know what, Jesse, I think there's a very good chance that one of them will be a cooperating witness. Anytime you have multiple arrests for the same crime, the police are going to want to work with one of them to try to get the others. And one of the things that they'll do is tell those witnesses that, look, we have evidence against you. And so I believe that they're going to do that so they can get everybody. At the end of the day, the authorities want to shut down this operation. In order to do that, it's going to be important to get one to testify against the others.
Welcome back, everybody. We're moving now to Miami, Florida, where trial started on Monday for Miguel Ruiz Lobo. He's charged in connection to the brutal death of an 11-year-old girl. Martha Guzman was found dead in her home 9 years ago, and prosecutors suspect that Ruiz Lobo killed her as revenge. Guzman's mother dated the defendant for several years and broke up with him 5 months before her daughter's death. Prosecutors say Guzman convinced her mother to break up with him after accusing him of being emotionally abusive. According to investigators, video surveillance shows the moments that Ruiz Lobo enters and leaves the victim's home, which he got into with his own key. Once inside, prosecutors say he fatally stabbed the victim, slitting her wrists and throat. Investigators say the victim had a history of self-harm, so the defendant staged her death to look like a suicide. During opening statements, Ruiz Lobo's defense attorney explained why this case isn't so black and white.
Miguel, when questioned, was asked, for example, to give a sample of DNA. He could refuse, but he had no reason to, and he willingly agreed. Even when told he didn't have to, he agreed to speak to the police. Even when told he didn't have to, he consented to a search of the apartment and his room. He consented to the photographs being taken that you saw, and he consented to a search of his car. And he told the police where the car was located. What you will not hear is that while they went into the apartment to look for evidence, they never looked at his car. The car that he, according to them, drove away from the murder scene. The car that presumably, if they had looked and if they were right, would have traces of blood or other evidence. They never looked.
Brian, when you think about the forensics in the case, which are going to be the most difficult for the defense?
Yeah, so I see two that really stick out to me, Jesse. One is the DNA under the victim's fingernails. From my understanding, it's the defendant's. And so a lot of people, you don't even need to be an internet sleuth or big into true crime. You think someone dies, they try to defend themselves, check the fingernails, and if there's a match, that's a hard thing to come from underneath. But also, sometimes it's not the crime, but it's the cover-up. It's the attempt to try to make this look like a suicide and a slitting of the wrist. My understanding is that the wrists were slit so deep that they almost fell off. And so it really shows that someone must have known who this young girl was to know that she suffered from self-harm and tried to fake it enough to the point that they almost mutilated her. So it shows anger and knowledge of her, and who else could that be but an ex-boyfriend with DNA under her fingernails? Those two facts are very damaging for the defense.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And Terry, the victim's sister took the stand to tell her story. What were some of the key takeaways from her testimony?
Well, first of all, Jesse, she was extremely credible. Now, there is a language barrier here, so there was an interpreter, and you have to listen very closely to what she says so that you can hear what the interpretation is. But she got very emotional on that stand, particularly when she started talking about her sister's young age of 11. The two critical points, I think, one, the fact that the defendant told her he didn't like Marta. He did not like her sister. And so that was before the crime, and I think that that was very pivotal in the case. The other issue, that video that we saw of the defendant walking out, she identified him, and I think on cross they should have said something, but they asked her no questions.
What a case. And, you know, it's just another example. I'm sorry, the majority of the cases we're covering right now are just really horrifying deaths of children, but unfortunately, the perpetrators out there are just equally as sinister.